National Signing Day Part 2 rolls on.
Two, Mike. Two, Mike.
That's what "Dieu" means. The Northwestern Wildcats, here's a look at some of the big names they are bringing in, including defensive lineman Devin O'Rourke, who 6 weeks ago when we talked to Pat Fitgerald, he said it reminds him of Dean Lowry. He's a talented wrestler in the high school, tall dude, 6'6", one of the many guys they're bringing in. And Pat Fitgerald has some interesting perspective. It's his 13th year he's about to start as the head coach. Why not bring him in now? We didn't get a chance to see you face-to-face 6 weeks ago, Pat. We're thrilled to have you now.
Hey, the only person complaining about that was my mom. So, you know, I'm sorry for all of our fans on BTN that you got to see me this morning.
Well, take me through, since this is the first time we've gone through this, what were the last 6 weeks like in terms of recruiting? Was it kind of the same? Was it far less intense? What was it like as a head coach?
Well, it's always going to be intense, but I think very different. You know, I thought January was like it used to be for me as a head coach, where I was out in April and May and in a different city every day doing more junior and sophomore recruiting than I was recruiting for the 18 class. You know, we just signed two, I think, great young men to add to our class, and Sam and AJ. You know, fired up about both those guys. And because of the signing date in the 20th, we could really do a hard needs assessment on what we were able to sign and then maybe what our needs were. Maybe not necessarily always projecting for maybe 19's class or 18's class, but maybe for 19. So I really liked it. I liked it a lot. I think it was a great first step forward. And my hope is that we continue to analyze what's best for this process and not be stuck in, well, this is what we've always done. This is the way the calendar's always been, and look at it a little bit more holistically. But I think it was a good first step.
You know, Jerry mentioned that just a few minutes ago, that he thinks now might be a little too early, but by next year we'll get an idea really on how this affects everyone. When do you think we'll know if this change truly is a good thing?
Well, I think going into it, I think a lot of coaches, because the word change was involved to it, were totally adverse to it. And I can respect that, but you know, I've been a part of a lot of these discussions for a number of years, and you know, our calendar has been like this sacred grail that shouldn't be touched when it comes to recruiting. And I'd like to look at it again a little bit deeper. I know I might be in the minority in the coaching profession with that, but whatever's best for the young men and their families, for the high school coaches and our assistants, are where we should go. We shouldn't be tied to what we've always done. We shouldn't be tied to what they do in other sports. You know, football is a totally different beast when it comes to this process. I'd love to go back to the way it was in 1985, not recruit kids until after their senior year. But that genie's way out of the bottle. So, you know, we've got to find a way to make this thing better, and I think this was a good first step.
Is there anything else off the top of your head that you go, if I could change this about recruiting, I would do X?
You know, I would eliminate rules that are guidelines. You know, there's rules that you can't enforce that are just guidelines, and I think that's really frustrating to coaches. I was dead wrong with the text messaging. I thought that would totally ruin our assistant coaches' lives, and I think that if done properly is a great way to build relationships with kids and their families. So, you know, I would just really look at this thing, I think, again, at a holistic approach. I think it's going to, like Coach DiNardo probably said, I didn't see it. I'm sorry I wasn't watching. I was in a staff meeting, to be honest with you. But, you know, I think it's a little bit too soon for even more change. I think we've just got to continue to collaborate and have good discussions.
One more big picture question before we get to your class this year. Every program's different, every head coach is different, and there's so many different things about recruiting. In the area of early enrollment, what's your philosophy? If a kid comes to you and says, I want to enroll early, what do you say?
Well, I'm all for it if that's what the young man truly wants to do. And he has to understand what he's getting into if he wants to enroll early. And so that has to happen probably early for us, earlier in the process, maybe than for our other peers in the Big Ten, because of the academic component. You know, we have requirements here that are higher than NCAA minimums. We have expectations of classes that they enroll in, academic success that are different than our peers. And so we've really got to work hard with the coach, with the family, with the guidance counselor, with the registrar, with the principal. Sometimes it's even had to go up to the superintendent in the school district to make sure that we have everything lined up to help that young person have a great fall, be a great teammate, have a great senior year, and then have everything academically handled so that they can matriculate here early. But they have to want to do it, Mike. I mean, the analogy I use with families is it's like going to a water fountain to get a drink of water and getting smacked with a fire hose. You know, you got to understand you're going from the top of the totem pole back down to being a freshman, and you're not necessarily the class that came in August, and you're not coming in with your class that's coming in August. So it's a really interesting dynamic socially that a kid is a part of, and they've got to be mature enough, not just at Northwestern, but I think across the board to handle it. The football side, that's all awesome. Workouts, spring ball, that's all great, but I'm more concerned with the academic and the socialization side to make sure these kids end up being excited after being here for a month.
Well, let's break down your class coming in 2018 overall. You know, you look at the last few years, you only had a couple kids from in-state in Illinois. This year, I believe you had 7. What's the reason for that?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, academic fit. You know, this was a great class for us, and our recruiting office with Chris Bowers and our assistant coaches did a great job, I think, early identifying kids in this year's class. I'm going to be frank, I'm a little disappointed right now academically in the 19 class. And so we'll see how that progresses as we get 6 semester transcripts here with kids. But if there's one thing I say that I hope gets recorded and sent to 7th and 8th graders, you cannot have a bad freshman year and use that as an excuse to, you're going to close doors. You've got to start your freshman year fast academically if Northwestern's going to be a school that's going to fit you. And as I look at this year's class that we just signed, this group, I couldn't be more excited. It's a group that I think are great academically, and I think outstanding football players.
You mentioned them briefly, but there are 2 kids you got in this class, A.J. Hampton, the cornerback from Florida, and Sam Stovall, the offensive lineman from Tennessee. Your quick thoughts on what you like about those guys?
Well, both guys were committed to other schools but didn't sign, which in my opinion means you're not committed. If you don't sign in December, you're not committed, and it's wide open in January. And so we did a needs assessment based on a lot of things that happened in your program, and we looked at the O-line and corner as a position that we wanted to go out and identify 2 young men that would fit. You know, Sam, I think, is a real physical, athletic kid, but physical. That's what really jumped out to me. And then AJ can really run. He's from a coaching family. He's been around the game his whole life. He hasn't played corner his whole career. And so his upside and ceiling, I think, is really exciting. So fired up for those 2 guys to join our family. And then with the 5 guys that we've got early enrolled, we'll be in spring ball here in 3 weeks and look forward to watching those guys compete.
Always great talking to you, Pat Fitgerald, Northwestern head coach. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Go Cats.